Welcome back to the Bills Bunker. It's a very special show today as it's the first live stream, first Table Smash Tuesday since the conclusion of the 2024 NFL Draft on Saturday. There's been some Buffalo Bills news that transpired yesterday on Monday after the NFL Draft as well, which we'll be talking about, how Greg Rousseau had his fifth-year option picked up by the Buffalo Bills, and the Buffalo Bills in the draft class selecting a grand total of 10 players, adding quite the infusion of youth to the roster. So there's a lot to talk about in this live stream here today. I want to hear you all with your opinions in the comment section down below. We'll touch on each player a little bit, and we'll also discuss whatever is on your mind in the comment section down below. So let's hear it. It's going to be a big show. Welcome back, everybody. And if you haven't yet, I encourage you to subscribe to the channel. Stay tuned for more content coming your way. Click like, helps out the channel in a big time way. And I guess I should introduce myself. I'm Jake Varco. This is the Bills Bunker. Table Smash Tuesday, and it's the biggest Table Smash Tuesday up to date because it's right after the draft. Here we go. Let's get it started and here.
Go Bills.
Look at this. Look at this crowd. Look at this.
Yes, it makes us wanna shout. Shout!
1, 2, 3, 4 years in a row. AFC East champion in our division. Let's go.
This guy's short Lindsay's dropping in.
Let's go.
That's a nice show for you. Look at it. Beautiful. Honestly, one of the best things I've seen all night. Those fireworks right there. Here we go. Table Smash Tuesday. It's the show after the draft where the Buffalo Bills added quite the infusion of youth with 10 players being added to the roster. I'm sure not every one of these players will end up cracking the NFL roster or even playing in the NFL, but there's a lot of potential, a lot of boom or bust potential in this draft class, and there's a lot of entertaining personalities here that we have to discuss as well. I'm sure everyone has seen Keon Coleman and his press conferences as of late, but we'll get to that. First off, the Buffalo Bills made an announcement yesterday, and that announcement was they picked up the fifth-year option on defensive end Gregory Rousseau. Now, Gregory Rousseau, he's only 24 years old still. He's entering his fourth NFL season in the 2024 campaign, and he's someone who's had 17 sacks over the last three seasons during his NFL tenure. Now, those numbers aren't eye-popping, but this guy is a edge rusher that is he excels in run stopping, and he's a big body. He's got a really long body, like his wingspan is crazy. He's a big man. And there's a lot of room for growth and development for him still at just 24 years old. And when you look at Leonard Floyd departing the San Francisco 49ers, he was the leader in sacks with 10.5 for Buffalo last year. Those are some big voids to fill for the Buffalo Bills. Greg Rousseau, he's been here for a while, and the Bills are going to need him to step up next season. So what this fifth-year team option does is it gives him security, and it gives the Bills security as they'll have him locked up through the conclusion of the 2025 season. So next season and the year after that, Greg Rousseau remains a Buffalo Bill. And, I mean, there's a lot of uncertainty at the edge rusher position. We don't know what Von Miller's production is going to be like. AJ Epinesa, he had a better season than we've seen in years past, but he hasn't really done too much for us. And the Bills added a bit at the edge rusher position in the later rounds of the NFL draft, but that's what we're going to get into now. I think Greg Rousseau, he's a solid player. He's a young talent, and he still has some room for growth and development, and the Buffalo Bills, they need him to step up. I like the move by Buffalo, picking up the 5th-year team option on him, securing a defensive end for the beyond next season. Like, you have this guy under contract for a few more years now, and you don't have to worry about it. It's simple as that. Joseph Clark says, love the horn. Yes, the horn. So for those that don't know, that horn, Bills fan 2020 says, loves it too. Don't know why it's not used as a touchdown horn. The horn is actually, those train horns are used every time the Bills defense have to get a 3rd down stop, and it's to hype up the crowd, and the fans are banging on the seats in front of them. It gets pretty rowdy in that building in Highmark Stadium. So here we go. We've talked about Greg Rousseau, but the big stuff, the biggest news over the last week or so was the 2024 NFL draft, and the Buffalo Bills had quite the draft class. You can see on the ticker down below here, they added a total of 10 players to their roster. Not every one of these guys is going to crack an NFL roster. A lot of these guys, not a lot of these guys, but a few of these guys are probably just never going to make it to the NFL. They might not pan out. However, some of these guys, they're going to exceed expectations, hopefully, and they're going to become stars in the National Football League. That's the hope for every one of these picks. The Bills, they took a swing with some of these late round picks, and they traded down in the first round, which they traded down twice in the first round. That's something that a lot of people were upset about. And at the time, I'll be honest, I was upset about the Bills trading down as well, for one reason only. I was fine with them trading down, but I hated the fact that the Bills gave the Kansas City Chiefs the pick that they used to select Xavier Worthy, who's a speedy wide receiver, and he's not Tyreek Hill, but you give Patrick Mahomes that speed receiver, and he can utilize him in the same way. So that frustrated me a little bit, but I thought about it. I slept on it overnight, and I said to myself, I said, okay, the Bills, they weren't going to draft Xavier Worthy. Clearly, that wasn't their guy. The Chiefs were up 4 picks later. The chances that Xavier Worthy gets selected within those 4 picks, I'm not sure what those chances are. I don't think they're too good, though, because there's a bunch of different wide receivers on the board, and San Francisco at pick 31 went way off the board with Ricky Pearsall out of Florida. So they traded down to pick number 32 there. And at the time I was frustrated, but after thinking about it, sleeping on it, it makes a little more sense because, okay, you're not taking Xavier Worthy. That's not your guy. Clearly it's not your guy because the wide receiver the Bills drafted is a polar opposite of Xavier Worthy. Worthy is, I think he's 5'10", 165 pounds. Keelan Coleman, 6'3", 213 pounds. These are very different wide receivers, and they have different skill sets as well. So when you trade that pick to the Chiefs, what you do is you're just getting some draft capital in return for a guy that you didn't want in the first place. I didn't like the fact that they gave him to the Chiefs, but they probably would have got him anyways. So it is what it is, and I think that maybe it actually looks like it was a good idea by the Bills. And this is something that we'll be talking about a few years from now, because if Xavier Worthy turns out to be a stud and Keelan Coleman doesn't, then that's a conversation that we're going to have again. But if it goes the other way, Keelan Coleman turns into a stud and Xavier Worthy, not so much, we'll also be having the conversation then. It's just kind of bringing back that scar tissue of when the Buffalo Bills traded with the Kansas City Chiefs in the 2017 NFL draft, and the Chiefs selected the guy the Bills just can't get past in Patrick Mahomes. But, hey, that's a past. This is now. It's a new year. It was a new draft, and we're going to talk about the draft class now. Let's start with the Buffalo Bills draft class, their newest wide receiver. And their newest wide receiver. I'll get to some comments first because comments here says, Steph says, thoughts on the pick, who has 0 football experience. I'll talk about him more later, but right now when I think about, his name is Travis Clayton, by the way. He's from the International Pathway Program from overseas in the UK. Travis Clayton is an interesting specimen of a human being. He's 6'7". I think it's 307 pounds. Travis Clayton is a massive man. And at the time, because it's 7th round, and I was wanting the Bills to double dip, and Brendan Rice was still on the board. I was like, give me Brendan Rice. You know, the bloodlines, the potential is there for a wide receiver star in the making. But no, the Bills went with Travis Clayton, a guy who I didn't know much about at the time. But I did some research, and I thought to myself, okay, you're drafting at a premium position by getting an offensive tackle who, although he's never played the game of football, never a single minute of American football, that's fine, because Jordan Mailata of the Philadelphia Eagles, who is a star tackle, that's the same kind of thing. He was a rugby player, and he turned out really well for the Philadelphia Eagles. So it's going to take some time to groom and develop Travis Clayton, but with the right guidance in Buffalo, who knows? He might turn out to be a really good player, and Brandon Beane might look like a genius, but that is something that we'll have to talk about in a few years from now. But really, we won't be talking about it if Clayton doesn't turn out well, because it was a 7th round pick, 221st overall. It doesn't really matter at the time. It doesn't really matter. It's you swing, you miss, it's okay. You swing, you hit a home run, it's awesome. It's like baseball. If you're going to go down, you go down swinging. That's the way you should in those late round picks, the 7th round. Just take a shot. Throw a dart and see what happens. Bills fan 2020 says, who's wide receiver 1, Khalil Shakir or Keelan Coleman? And I anticipate that will be none other than the Bills' newest wide receiver, Keelan Coleman, who I'm about to highlight right now. And the reason for that, Khalil Shakir, he has experience in the Bills' offense. He's a solid wide receiver, but he's a smaller guy, and he plays in the slot. He's a fixture in the slot. I don't think that the Bills want to mess with that. Keelan Coleman, on the other hand, 6'3", 213 pounds. I have his size memorized from how many times I've talked about him. He is what the Bills are hoping to be, an ex-wide receiver, and at just 20 years old, he'll be 21 years old in a few weeks. He's going to step right into the Bills' offense, and he's going to be expected to produce at a high level. Brandon Beane has had his eyes set on Keelan Coleman for quite some time, and based off what I heard in that press conference from Brandon Beane right after he drafted Coleman, there's questions about, what were your scouting and like, how'd you scout this guy? And he said that he saw him in his FSU debut in 2023 after he transferred from Michigan State, when Keelan Coleman went off for 123 yards and 3 total touchdowns with 9 receptions against Louisiana State University Tigers in what was a 45-24 victory. I have all this stuff memorized. I've done a lot of research on Keelan Coleman. And yes, he is related to CeeDee Lamb, cousins that both came from the same city in Louisiana. That's some solid bloodlines. If you can turn out like CeeDee Lamb, that would be a steal. So let's talk about Keelan Coleman of the Buffalo Bills, their newest wide receiver, who he has a great personality, but he has some great intangibles. Look at this. In 2023, he had 50 receptions for 658 yards and 11 touchdowns. He led the entire ACC division in touchdown receptions in 2023. Some impressive stuff from Coleman, and he had 25 punt returns for 300 yards, averaging 12 yards per return, which also led the ACC in return yards. Now, when you look at the Buffalo Bills right now, a wide receiver that's missing is Deontay Hardy. And Deontay Hardy, he headed to the Baltimore Ravens. He was also their punt returner. That was what his main role was. Potentially, you could see Keelan Coleman in a returning role, but I think there's a couple guys that meet the criteria of, returning duties. That's something that remains to be seen. What I do know and what I can tell you is that Keelan Coleman is going to be a fixture in the Buffalo Bills offense this season. Right away, he's going to be expected to play a big-time role for this team. Keelan Coleman, at just 20 years old, he stands in at 6'3", 213 pounds. He's going to be the X wide receiver that the Bills needed. And if I were to give him a comparison, I'm thinking a guy like a Cortland Sutton or like Gabe Davis, but with a much, much higher upside and better hands. This guy is going to be a red zone threat for the Bills. He's going to be that power wide receiver that the Bills have been missing, a physical wide receiver, a specimen of an athlete. He has a background in basketball. So what that background in basketball allows Keon Coleman to do, he excels in 50-50 jump ball scenarios. He can moss the defender. He can jump right over you. And he has good hands. And, I mean, there's glimpses. We've seen glimpses, a few scenarios where he's hurdled defenders like his middle name is Josh. Like, this guy fits into Buffalo really well. And he wants to be here by all accounts. And if you've seen his press conference or any of the videos that the Bills have released on him, his personality is awesome. I think he's going to become a fan favorite in Buffalo as long as he succeeds and does well. He just needs to make the transition to the National Football League. And if he can do that, Keon Coleman will be a big-time fan favorite just because of his personality and his skill set. Like, he seems like he's going to be an exciting player for the Bills over the next few years. I'm really excited to see him in the National Football League. But I just touched on how Keon Coleman has a background, like he's a multiple sport athlete, and he has a background in basketball. He was asked about golfing as well. And this guy's funny. I'll show you this whole golf thing.
I could golf a little bit now. Like I said, I'm Tiger. Wish he could. I wish I could golf for real, but I could drive pretty good. Putting in, it's all right. Too hard. Third time a charm. Oh, cut that. I'm Tiger Woods. Huh? Oh, wait, that don't count. Last one. What?
Tiger wish he could. This guy's a character, and he's got an awesome personality. There's clips of him where he goes back and there's like I'm not sure how to describe it. It's like a cold tank of some sort where it's for healing the body. And Keon Coleman goes in there. He says, "Turn the lights off again. I'm the Undertaker." Like, this guy is hilarious, and he's going to be a fan favorite right away. And if he can bring those exciting plays to Buffalo, like we anticipate that he can, this guy, his jersey sales are going to be through the roof. Now, that's not all. Because we're talking about like his golf and stuff. But this guy also, when he got onto the field at Highmark Stadium, he was like a kid in a candy shop. He caught imaginary touchdowns. Look at this.
I scored 3 imaginary touchdowns. I scored a touchdown. Boom. I dap up my lineman. They pick me up. And we throw the ball to the fan sitting right there. A little boy with a sign.
This guy's awesome. I really hope he succeeds in the National Football League. He's got an awesome personality, an awesome story coming from a small town, Opelousas in Louisiana, with a population of just over 15,000. He's the 6th player in the history of that town to go to the National Football League. So he's really defying the odds there. He's got a big body. He's got the NFL bloodlines, being the cousin of CeeDee Lamb. There's a lot to like about this guy, and I can't wait to see him suit up in Buffalo next season. Josh Allen wanted him, which tells you all you need to know. You can't really criticize this pick because Josh Allen wanted Keon Coleman himself, and Josh Allen knows a thing or two about skilled wide receivers, as he's a franchise quarterback, an absolute gunslinger, and I envision the chemistry between these two being awesome. They have similar personalities. They both love to hurdle defenders, and Josh Allen loves to sling the rock. Now, Keon Coleman, he can go up and get the ball as a physical wide receiver. So that connection, 17-0, that's what we hope the Bills' record is going to be in 2024. 17-0, that's our record. 17-0. Allen, Coleman, awesome connection. Let's go. I'm excited to see it happen. Now we'll talk a few more here. We've got 9 more players to cover. 9 more players to cover in what was really quite the infusion of youth for the Buffalo Bills here. The Buffalo Bills, next player they added was from Utah, at the safety position. He goes by the name of Cole Bishop, 6'2", 206 pounds, and he's 21 years of age. He has versatility as a defender, and honestly, he's a really strong tackler that has the ability to play on all 3 levels of the defense. You can send him in blitz packages, big nickel packages. You can drop him back into coverage. But really, this guy's strongest asset is his tackling ability. He's a big body at the safety position at 6'2", 206 pounds. And in 2023, he recorded 60 total tackles with 6.5 tackles for loss, which is a lot from the safety position. 3 sacks, 2 interceptions, and 4 passes defended. If we know anything about the Buffalo Bills, we know that their safety tandem over the last few years has been impeccable. You add Micah Hyde and you add Jordan Poyer together for 7 seasons. Now, Cole Bishop, is he going to be asked to come in and replace those 2 right away? Probably not. But I envision that he will be sent in on some different packages, like the big nickel package for sure. I think Cole Bishop's going to be a fixture in this Bills defense. I don't know exactly how much he'll be utilized, and I don't know if he'll be a day 1 starter, but he has the opportunity to compete as, there's not really much star power at that position right now. The safety position for Buffalo, you have Mike Edwards from the Kansas City Chiefs, who he won a Super Bowl in Kansas City, and he won a Super Bowl in Tampa Bay in 2020 with Tom Brady. You have Damar Hamlin, who, we know he's nothing. He's not a superstar by any means of the imagination. You have Taylor Rapp, who competed. I think Taylor Rapp will probably be a starter on this defense at the safety position because we saw him in glimpses last season, and he did some solid things for the Bills. If I remember one thing about the NFL season with Taylor Rapp last year, it was he hits hard, and the fact that he had that interception in Week 18 against the Miami Dolphins, a game that I was at Hard Rock Stadium. He had the game-sealing interception, and the commentator said, Taylor Rapp with an interception, and that's a wrap on the division for the Buffalo Bills as they closed out their 4th straight AFC East title. Tua Tagovailoa, Tua turned the ball over, throws an interception right to Taylor Rapp. I don't know why, but he threw it to Chase Claypool of all people. Silliness. Weird stuff from Tua there, and a big-time play from Taylor Rapp, showing that he can perform in the clutch. So I think Taylor Rapp's going to be a starter next season. And Cole Bishop, the newest Bills safety, has an opportunity here to compete with guys like Damar Hamlin and obviously Mike Edwards as well. But he will definitely be utilized in the Bills offense going forward. Thank you so much, Steph. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. It means a lot to see a super sticker here like that. And, I really appreciate it. Yeah. 17. Yeah, you like that. 17-0. Bills fan says, about to be 5-time AFC East champs. Woo. 5 straight. I think so. And you know what? It's early to say this, but if you look at any betting odds website, the Buffalo Bills are still favored to win the AFC East. I hear a lot of smack talk from Dolphins fans or Jets fans even. But you know what? The Bills are still AFC East division favorites for a reason, and they're still, if you look, a lot of people are counting this team out. The Bills are still 4th, tied for 4th with the Cincinnati Bengals on the Super Bowl odds list, according to FanDuel. So, is there going to be big-time regression with this Bills team? You tell me. There might be a light step back because they got a lot younger, and there's going to be a lot of young players coming into the mix here. But I don't think regression is going to be anything too serious for the Bills, considering Vegas has them favored to win the whole AFC East division again, and they're still in the top 5 of the Super Bowl odds. Now, let's talk. So, we're about to get to another. We'll get to him in a minute. Imagine being Ray Davis, 2 siblings that he talked about in his story, calls you, fight you to your draft, or just ghost them. That's interesting. Ray Davis is quite the prospect. I'm really excited to see. I'm excited to see him. He's got a lot, but we have Dwayne Carter, and then we'll get to Ray Davis. So Dwayne Carter, defensive tackle position for the Buffalo Bills, was one of those positions in need. Obviously, you have Ed Oliver, who plays as the 3-tech defensive tackle, and then you have Daquan Jones. And after that, there's quite like a drop-off, pretty significant drop-off at the position. And that's why the Buffalo Bills went out and drafted Dwayne Carter out of Duke, who's 6'3", 305 pounds. That is a big man who's going to fill the role. The desired outcome for Dwayne Carter with this pick is for him to eventually take over as the starter for Daquan Jones. But as of right now, he's going to be utilized quite often, I believe, as a plug-and-play player that he's going to be a rotational piece in Sean McDermott's defense. That's how I envision him being utilized. 23 years old, 3-time captain at Duke. He's the first player to be a 3-year captain in Duke's football program history. So obviously this is someone who has those talents that he has those uncoachable traits that Sean McDermott desires as a leader. Any coach wants leaders in their locker room, and Dwayne Carter, hard worker, leader, that's the type of player that Sean McDermott's wanting on his team. He's a nose tackle that he actually excels in the pass rushing category, which solid. His stats don't really tell the full story. Last season, 41 total tackles with 3.5 tackles for loss, 1 sack, and he had 4 passes defended. So this guy, he jumps up to get the ball. He swats the ball out of the air. That's something that's good. Just getting in the face of the quarterback. He hurried the quarterback often. Got a lot of quarterback hits. Not a lot of sacks last season, but prior to that, he had a lot of sacks in the other years at Duke. And this is a big body that I think Dwayne Carter at 95th overall, that's a really good value pick, especially when you consider the needs that the Buffalo Bills have at that position. Obviously, they have a lot of bodies that, like Austin Johnson, they've got a few other guys there in the mix, but behind Daquan Jones, it's a significant drop-off after that. And he's not going to play at Oliver's position, so I'm not even going to talk about that. Daquan Jones, 32 years old. He's been injured each of the last 2 seasons. He's played through some injuries. We know that he has an injury history. We know that he's on the wrong side of 30. He just signed a 2-year extension worth $16 million. So Daquan Jones here, he's a starter still. But Dwayne Carter was drafted to eventually take over at that position, and he was drafted as someone that's probably going to be utilized quite frequently as a plug-and-play player and a rotational piece in Sean McDermott's defense. And obviously, this is a guy with that those leadership tendencies. So I'm a big fan of this pick. Now, we're going to get to the next guy. But before we do that, I'll check out some comments. And if you haven't yet, I encourage you to click like, share this video, tell a friend to tell a friend. And if you're new here, click that subscribe button. Stay tuned for more content coming your way every Tuesday, 7 p.m. I'm here, Table Smash Tuesday. We've covered 3 of the NFL draft prospects for the Buffalo Bills, but we still have 7 more to go. The Bills, they drafted a lot of players here. The draft plan was clear. The draft plan was clearly to add an infusion of youth, trade down multiple times, get a bunch of picks, add picks for next season as well. The Bills have a lot of picks next season, and they have a lot of money coming their way next season. So they're going to be a big-time threat in free agency and in the draft next year. Who knows? They could use those picks to make some trades at the trade deadline too. Who knows? But the Buffalo Bills here, they just did I think they had a decent draft here. Early AFC East prediction by Bills Fan 2020 says Buffalo 14-3, Miami 9-8, Pats 8-9, Jets 7-10 for the Jets. Everyone's talking up the Jets, and honestly, I think the Jets. I think the Jets need to be better than the Patriots. I get Drake May solid, but I don't see the Patriots being better than the Jets this season, especially if Aaron Rodgers stays healthy. But yeah, not ideal. Okay, now we're gonna go to our next prospect, and this one was also a day 2 pick by the Buffalo Bills. The third and final day 2 pick by the Bills was running back Ray Davis from the University of Kentucky, standing in at 5'10", 216 pounds. The 24-year-old led the entire NCAA, all of college football, running backs at the running back position. He led them all in touchdown receptions with 7, and he had quite the season in 2023. He had 14 touchdown rushes with those 7 touchdown receptions. So a total of 21 touchdowns. 21 touchdowns for Ray Davis with 199 carries for over 1,100 yards, averaging 5.7 yards per carry. This is a guy that, at the running back position, there's a lot of running backs who they come into the National Football League and they don't stay for very long. The Buffalo Bills at the running back position, they don't have very much depth. You had Damian Harris retire. You had Latavius Murray leave. You now have Leonard Fournette was cut last season too. Now, what the Buffalo Bills are doing here, you only have those 2 running backs in James Cook and Ty Johnson. You're adding another one into the mix. He has a similar skill set to that of James Cook. He's a big-time receiving threat out of the backfield, and he's someone who runs with a little more power than a guy like James Cook. 24 years old, so he's an older prospect. And this is a guy who I think Josh Allen is going to love Ray Davis if he can be utilized properly in the Buffalo Bills offense by offensive coordinator Joe Brady. This is a pick that could turn out to present a lot of value for the Bills on their offense. I think he fits into the offensive scheme really well. And getting those weapons for Josh Allen, you can never have enough of those weapons on the offensive side of the football. Ray Davis is another one, and if you watch his highlight tape, it's some special stuff. This guy's got a lot of talent, and the way he can run from side to side, he gets the ball, and then he just makes things happen. He makes things happen with the ball in his hands, and he showcased a lot of explosiveness with Kentucky last season. So this is a pick where running backs are very boom or bust, but I think Ray Davis has the potential to fit into Buffalo's offense really well. It'll be interesting to see how he's utilized and how many offensive snaps he gets out of the backfield, because the Bills have a dog in James Cook. He's their main workhorse, but Ray Davis, he'll have his opportunities to take some carries and potentially take over that RB2 spot from Ty Johnson. Ray Davis, he'll be a Buffalo Bill over the next 4 seasons. Obviously, that's barring any cut or anything like that, but this is someone who I like the addition for Buffalo. I really do. Bills Fan 2020 says, I don't see the Jets being better than the Pats because the Jets never played a full game with Aaron Rodgers, so there'll be some growing pains. I mean, we'll see. We'll see, because you could say the same thing about the Patriots have never played a game for Drake May. We'll see. I think Aaron Rodgers, he could come back with some vengeance here. He's got a lot of weapons now, but that the whole offense has a lot of injury concerns, a lot of red flags. Like Mike Williams, a guy they signed, great wide receiver when he's healthy, but when is he ever healthy? Aaron Rodgers coming off the Achilles tear. Tyron Smith, he's an old player for offensive tackle, but when he's healthy, he's one of the best in the league. So the Jets, they have a lot of potential there. but there's also a lot of red flags because of how old their offensive players are. They'll be an interesting team to watch next season for sure. But we said that last year, and we've said that for years now. So we'll see. We'll see what happens with that. Next up, this right here is my favorite prospect for the Buffalo Bills. And sure, we have Keon Coleman at the wide receiver position. He's got a lot of great traits as well. But my favorite value pick of this entire 2024 NFL draft class for Buffalo is none other than offensive lineman and center Cedric Van Pran Granger, standing in at 6'4", 310 pounds at just 22 years old. He's played in 44 consecutive games during his college career with the Georgia Bulldogs, and he was a first-team All-SEC selection and a second-team All-American in 2023 with the Bulldogs. Some solid stuff. This is so new. Those are some impressive credentials for someone who's selected in the 5th round. The 5th round. This is a day 3 pick picked up on the 5th round by Buffalo. In 2023, he allowed 0 sacks on 485 pass blocking snaps. That's impressive. Very, very impressive stuff. And on top of all this, something that I think is very critical that we need to touch on is the fact that Van Pran, obviously a member of the Georgia Bulldogs formerly, well, his former teammate is Buffalo Bills running back James Cook. I have a feeling that James Cook might have had a little bit of say in this because James Cook, Bills workhorse at the running back position. Van Pran and James Cook, these are two players that have played together in the past. Now, we talk a lot about chemistry in the National Football League. And one spot where it's very important is between running backs and interior offensive linemen, exterior offensive linemen, whatever it may be. The offensive line needs to be on the same page as their running backs because the running backs, they're going to look for where there are holes. The running back needs to have anticipation of where that hole is going to be created. What is the offensive lineman going to do? Where is he going to move? Well, these two are now reunited, and it feels so good. Just like the song. Just like the song says, reunited, and it feels so good. James Cook and Cedric Van Pran Granger back together, formerly with the Georgia Bulldogs, now with the Buffalo Bills, and I think this is a great idea. This has all the makings of a potential late round value steal. 5th round pick, Cedric Van Pran Granger. It's a mouthful to say the name, but this is a player that could potentially be an absolute steal for Buffalo. He's coming in at the center position, a lot of experience, a lot of work. Didn't miss any of the games last season with Georgia. He was a fixture of that offensive line for Georgia, and obviously as a former teammate with James Cook, we talked about the chemistry. But now he's going to have the opportunity to come into Buffalo and compete for a starting spot on day 1. I really, truly believe that he could be the day 1 starter at the center position. He's going to have to work his tail off, and he's going to have to compete with guys like Connor McGovern and Will Clapp. But it's possible that he takes over at that center position, whether it's day 1 or whether it's throughout his rookie season. It's definitely a possibility. It's something that we've seen the Bills do in the past. Just look last year. O'Cyrus Torrance. He was the day 1 starter after being a 2nd round pick at the guard position. Could Van Pran do that? I think he could, but it remains to be seen, and I'm excited to see what this guy brings to the table. Obviously, former teammate of James Cook. I don't really see anyone else talking about that. That is a dynamic duo, and I'm excited to have James Cook's former teammate with the Georgia Bulldogs in Buffalo. It's just like with Cole Bishop. Cole Bishop at the safety position that the Bills drafted in the 2nd round, 60th overall. Former Utah Utes teammate of Dalton Kincaid. However, these two, Van Pran and Cook, they, they play roles that correspond with each other. So this is obviously a pick that it could have an instant impact for the Buffalo Bills. And coming out of the 5th round, awesome stuff. That's my favorite pick by Buffalo in this entire draft class, and I think that it's gonna be a steal if it works out. Dude, all these guys are small cars, massive guys, freaks. Yeah, you know what? Like Cedric Van Pran Granger. What's his size again? Let's see. Van Pran Granger. These are massive human beings. 6'4", 310 pounds. Actually think about that. 6'4", 310 pounds. So it's one thing to be 6'4", 6'5", whatever. 310 pounds. Wow. And it's like, okay, offensive linemen get the rap of, okay, that's a fat man, whatever. That's not all fat. There's a lot of muscle on there too. Like, you have to be a strong man to play on the offensive or defensive line for that matter. So that right there, massive human being, it's not a human being that I would want to go up against if I was a defensive lineman. That's for sure. So I'm 6'5", but I ain't 310 pounds. That's crazy. And he's only 22 years old. Big human beings. That's why they're playing in the National Football League at the highest level of sports. And it's crazy to think how Xavier Worthy on the other end, the Kansas City Chiefs' newest wide receiver that the Bills basically traded Xavier Worthy to the Chiefs. 165 pounds. But he's got that speed, and I'll show the 40-yard dash time thing because I have it saved. He set the 40-yard dash record with a 4.21 40-yard dash. Obviously, some impressive stuff from Worthy. Speed guy, but he's so small. And when you talk about the size that some of these NFL players have, like I just said, Van Pran Granger, the 5th round pick out of Georgia for the Bills, 6'4", 310 pounds. Like, it's crazy to think about. But we'll move on. We'll move on to the next pick by the Buffalo Bills. And yes, Cook. James Cook, Cedric Van Pran Granger. I think that bringing that duo back together, really good idea. Really good idea for Buffalo. I've already touched on it about how you have the chemistry reading off of each other is such an important thing, especially for running backs and not offensive linemen, kind of like a quarterback and a wide receiver. You need to have that chemistry. You need to know what's going to happen. It's important. Okay, we'll move on. Will Smith is in the chat. Love to see the celebrities here. Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. Let's go. Okay, we're going on to our next pick. This one is really hard to say, so if I butcher it, I'm sorry. And if I butcher it, please give me a break. Okay, let's try this. Edefuan Olafosio. I think I did it right. I think I did well. I'm proud of myself. 6'1", 236 pounds at 24 years of age, so he's an older prospect. But there's a downside here. He suffered back-to-back season-ending injuries in 2021 and 2022 with a bicep injury during 2021 season and then an ACL injury in 2022. So that's some red flags, and I think that's the reason why, obviously, he fell so low into the 5th round. He was a Huskies team captain on a team that went 14-1 in Washington last season. So obviously those are some impressive credentials. In 2023, with 15 games played, he recorded 94 tackles with 8 tackles for loss, 3 sacks, an interception, and a forced fumble. And he was a finalist for the Butkus Award as the nation's top linebacker. So he was a nominee to be one of the nation's top linebackers, obviously. That's some impressive stuff. And he played as a captain on a team that went 14-1. Was in the Final Four. Washington solid school last year. Solid team. He was a captain in that team. That's a leader that you want on your team. He's a hard worker by all accounts, coming back from 2 season-ending injuries, but those injuries are some clear red flags. Bicep, ACL. You never want any injury history, and then you never really want to draft a player with injury history, but it is what it is. The Bills did it, and is it my favorite pick? Definitely not, but I think it's someone who has a lot of upside, and he just fell down to the right spot with, obviously, that injury history being the main catalyst there. So, Ulofoshio from Washington has the potential to be a steal here, but he also has the potential to get hurt, re-aggravate some of those injuries, and you don't want that. So it presents some late round value at the linebacker position, a position that's currently being patrolled by Matt Milano and Terrell Bernard, 2 stars. But those are guys that went down with injuries as well last season. You don't want to sign someone off the street in AJ Klein. So this is a guy who, at the very least, he's going to provide depth for the team, and it's a good thing. Brandon Beane knows what he's doing. Ulofoshio, there's a lot to like about him from coming out of Washington. It's just the injury history is a bit of a red flag. This next pick that the Bills made, coming from the Detroit Trojans, going by the name of Javon Solomon, standing in at 6'2", 249 pounds at the age of 23 years old. And last year he had 16 sacks. He's had 11 or more sacks twice in his college career, which was 4 years. And like I just said, at 6'2", 249 pounds as an edge rusher, he's definitely undersized, because we talked about the size of some of these players just recently. 6'2", 249 pounds. It's a big boy, but it's not that big for the National Football League as an edge rusher. He'll look small in comparison to those left and right tackles. Those tackles on the offensive line will make him look small. So he's undersized, but he's very effective during his time at Troy with the Trojans. And in 2023, in 14 games played, he had 56 tackles with 18 tackles for loss, 16 sacks, 3 forced fumbles, and he led the entire NCAA in sacks. So, obviously, very, very effective as a defensive end, as an edge rusher. And this is a player who he's talked about how he looked up to Von Miller, and he was crying because he gets the opportunity to play with Von Miller and learn with Von Miller. That's something that Bills Mafia should be excited about. Javon Solomon, he has experience getting a lot of sacks in college football. He is very effective there. And although he's undersized, potentially, he brings that talent to the NFL. This could be a pick with a lot of late round value. It's a pick that I like. I'm a big fan of it. You get the leading sack getter in all of college football last year. I don't really see the downside to that, especially as someone who's picked on day 3 in the late stages of the draft. You got to take some swings here and just hope for the best. That's what you got to do. And that's what the Bills did with their last few picks, including this one. Tylen Grable from the University of Central Florida, UCF. 6'6", 306 pounds as an offensive tackle at 24 years old. So he's an old prospect. That is a bit of a red flag. Old prospect, and he has a lot of work that he still has to do. He's still a bit of a raw talent as an offensive tackle prospect. Started in all 13 games at UCF in 2023, which obviously you want to see your players stay healthy. So that's a green flag. He was an honorable mention for the All Big 12 team in 2023. So obviously he got the recognition and he ended up getting drafted. He has to work his tail off to even make the NFL. Let's be real here. 6th round pick, offensive tackle. This is an example of really just hoping for the best, swinging on one of your picks, hoping to hit a home run. If anyone watches baseball, it's basically you're going to guess the pitch, and you're just going to swing your absolute hardest, If you strike out, it is what it is. If you hit a home run, that's awesome. But offensive tackle, that's a really valuable position. You need people to protect your quarterback, especially when you have Josh Allen back there. You need people that can protect the quarterback. Tyling Rabel, he has a lot of technical stuff that he has to work on, but there's definitely a lot of potential there. That's why the Bills draft him in the 6th round. Just hoping for the best, really. That's all it is. Now, this next pick, I think it's a bit different, on the other hand. And this next pick, coming out of Penn State, is Daquan Hardy at 5'9", 189 pounds. Not a very big man. 22 years old. So, obviously, a young cornerback prospect with room for growth and development. He led the Big Ten division in punt return yardage last year and touchdowns as a punt returner, with 248 yards for 2 touchdowns on his returns. So he's a multi-purpose player. He could potentially compete for a role as a returner on the Bills, as there's no Deontay Hardy. So that's 2 players that have returning history that the Bills drafted, in Keon Coleman and Daquan Hardy. 2 players that could potentially fill multiple roles on this team. In 2023, Hardy had 22 tackles, 3 tackles for loss, a sack, and 2 interceptions with 7 passes defended. So some pretty impressive stuff coming out of Penn State for Hardy. And really, what I like about this pick, I always expect the Buffalo Bills to draft at the cornerback position late in the later stages of every draft class. You look at Christian Benford, Dane Jackson. This is something that the Bills front office has done in the past over the last few years, and usually they hit in a big time way on those late round corner picks. They find late round value and they draft and develop those corner prospects, or their safety prospects they draft and develop in the secondary exceptionally well. That's why I am very excited about the selection of Daquan Hardy out of Penn State. Obviously, anytime you get a guy that late, your hopes aren't that high for them, but you're hoping for that home run swing. And based off of the past picks made by Buffalo at that position, in Dane Jackson and Christian Benford, there's honestly a lot of reason to be hopeful for Daquan Hardy in the National Football League. He just went to the best spot for him. There's not a spot in the National Football League where you can go as a corner in the 7th round pick and, that's the best spot you can go, Buffalo. Because if you're a corner, you're going on day 3 late. This is a spot where you have the potential to be utilized properly, and you have an awesome development process in Buffalo. Whatever they're doing is a cornerback factory, and it works well. Because look, last year, Tre'Davious White went down with injury, and for the next 14 games, Christian Benford took over as a starter, as someone who's picked in the 6th round in 2021, and he did an awesome job. So Daquan Hardy, welcome to the Bills. This is the perfect landing spot for you. The Bills made one more pick, and we'll talk about him. Do you like buffalo wings? Come on. What kind of question is that? Obviously, I like buffalo wings. I love them. Absolutely love chicken wings. So good. It's my favorite cheat meal. Absolutely my favorite cheat meal. I like to eat pretty healthy. Chicken wings, favorite cheat meal. Now, the 10th and final pick made by the Buffalo Bills in the 2024 NFL Draft is a player who has actually never played football. American football, that is. He's played footy, soccer, but he's never played American football before. Never a single minute, never a single snap. So you might think, okay, that's a little crazy, but when you see what kind of athlete he is, it makes a little bit more sense. It's all about context, right? Travis Clayton, coming from the UK, standing in at 6'7", 303 pounds at 22 years old. How is that even possible? 6'7", 303 at 22 years old. And he's never played football. but he has a background in rugby, he has a background in boxing, and he also has a background in rowing as well. Like, this is a guy who he's a multi-sport athlete, and entering the NFL International Pathway Program, he's hoping to take those skills that he's learned from all these different sports and utilize them in the National Football League. Now, a lot of people might think this is crazy, but it's been done before. The rugby transition over to football, it's not easy. I've played both sports. They're very different. I played football first, and then I tried rugby. And rugby, it was a hard transition to make, but my rugby team wasn't very good. So, I don't know. It was a joke. Anyways, making that transition's got to be hard, especially at the highest level of sports in the National Football League. What you're getting with Travis Clayton is 6'7", 303 pounds at 22 years old. So he's someone who obviously has all the size, and he runs a really good 40-yard dash time. I think it was a 4.67 40-yard dash. I believe that's what it was. Like, he is a freak athlete. So we talk about value picks. This is a value pick for the Buffalo Bills. I wanted Brendan Rice right there, but he went the very next pick to the Los Angeles Chargers. That's all right, because you're getting an offensive tackle here who, if he doesn't pan out, whatever. But if Travis Clayton works out for the Bills, they're going to look like geniuses, and all it took was the 221st overall pick. Actually, think about that. This guy could turn out to be the replacement for Deion Dawkins in a few years. He could turn out to be a right tackle, play on the opposite side of Deion Dawkins. And all it costed was a 7th-round pick. Are you kidding? The value pick is there. There's potential for a home run here. We've seen the transition made by Jordan Mailata of the Philadelphia Eagles. Is it a high hit rate? Probably not. Is it possible? Definitely. Now, he's never played football. So with that being said, this is going to be a lengthy process. It's going to be a work in progress, and it's definitely going to be a project. But Brandon Beane spent a draft pick on this guy for a reason. He didn't want someone else to take him. He didn't want someone else to pick him up as an undrafted free agent. And that makes a lot of sense. That tells me that the Bills are going to work really hard with Travis Clayton to try to get him to groom and develop his skills and make the transition over to the National Football League. This is a guy who he's going to be on the practice squad, most likely. And the Bills, this could work out really well. Am I anticipating it? Not really. But if it works out, you get a mauler at the offensive tackle position for the price of the 221st overall pick. Think about that. It's pretty good. There's a pretty good trade-off there. We just talked about the baseball analogy and trying to hit that home run. Hey, if you strike out on a 7th-round pick, that's all right, because most of these guys don't ever play in the NFL anyways. There's not too many, Tom Brady's out there. There's not too many Brock Purdy, Mr. Irrelevance. There's not too many Joe Montanas. You just paid a 221st overall pick for a premium position as an offensive tackle. Took a shot on a guy who's never played football. That's all right. You look silly if he misses. Not really, because of how late in the draft it is. But you look like a genius if it hits. So I'm all for it. Took me a little bit of time to really think about it. And then I said, you know what? Yeah, offensive tackle. Offensive tackle is a valuable position. And if you can hit on that in the 7th round, it's well worth it. So why not give it a shot? Give it your best shot. Brandon Beane, if this hits, he's going to look really smart. Blue cheese. You already know. Never say ranch. That's a big no-no. That's a big no-no, is the ranch. If you're in Buffalo, you got ranch, you're going to get like weird look. The place that you go might not even have ranch. They'll just give you blue cheese, blue ranch. Weird. Blue cheese, they'll just give it to you. You'll get a weird look if you order ranch. But honestly, my favorite pick of the NFL draft class for the Bills. We just talked about all 10 of them. That's a lot. There's a lot to like here because Buffalo, they filled some positions of need here. They added that infusion of youth, and the more picks you make, the more chance you have on hitting on these picks. So, with that being said, Buffalo, if you just go based off the percentages here, they're more likely to hit on some of these picks, and some of these players will turn out to be impact players. Other ones, I'm sure, aren't going to make the NFL. That's just the way the NFL draft works. You're going to have hits, you're going to have misses. But as long as you're swinging, and if you miss, it's fine. Tilling Grable, 6th round pick by the Buffalo Bills. Travis Clayton, 7th round pick by the Bills. Both at the offensive tackle position. Those are prime examples of guys that you're taking a shot on. You don't know what you're getting. But if they hit, that's late round value. I respect it. And then early in the draft, getting your wide receiver in Keon Coleman. You trade down twice. A lot of people didn't like it. I myself at the time didn't like the idea of trading down. But then, it's like patience, grasshopper. You see what the plan is. Okay, so the Bills traded down, gave up a few draft spots to the Kansas City Chiefs, who probably would have gotten Xavier Worthy anyways. Even because the Bills weren't taking him. So you get a 3rd round pick, which ended up being Dwayne Carter. And Dwayne Carter is a guy who I envision being a plug-and-play player right away for the Bills. Will he be their day one starter? Probably not. But he's going to be a rotational piece in that defense, and he has a lot of leadership tendencies that Sean McDermott loves. So, fair trade. You can take Xavier Worthy, the undersized, speedy wide receiver that he might hit. We'll get our guy in Keon Coleman, and we'll move up to take Dwayne Carter. I think that's all right. Honestly, in retrospect, I don't hate it. At the time, I wasn't a fan. But then I thought about it. It's like, Kansas City's going to get him anyways. Probably would have gotten him anyways. Might as well get something back for him. It really isn't, but it's just the way it is, man. It's just the way it is. You know, you gotta tell me. A lot of people, you know, if you ask people, if you ask for the ranch in Buffalo, people are just gonna look at you weird. That's all. I don't care. If you like ranch, whatever, that's a you thing. Bills fan 1970. Oh, that's Joe Theismann in your picture, eh? Getting sacked. He's about to get hit. I certainly like the Carter pick. Yeah, Dwayne Carter is one of my favorite picks in this draft. Pick 95 in the 3rd round. So that's someone who could present a lot of value. And with Daquan Jones being 32 years old with an injury history, there's potential for a draft steal there. And there's potential where, with that injury history, if Carter goes down, you have someone that you can plug in and play. He has the leadership tendencies that Sean McDermott loves. He's 23 years old, and he's a pass-rushing defensive tackle. So I like it. I like it a lot because I think instantly he's better than a lot of the depth pieces that the Bills have at that nose tackle position. There really isn't much depth. There's a significant drop-off after Daquan Jones. My favorite pick of this entire draft, though, was in the trenches on the other side of the football. And it's Cedric Van Pran-Granger. Just look at all these things. Some impressive credentials. Playing in 44 straight games at Georgia. First team All-SEC selection. And a second team All-American selection. 0 sacks allowed on 485 pass blocking snaps. And he's the former teammate of James Cook. I think that being his former teammate of James Cook, I think that is something that isn't being talked about enough because the running back, they need to have that chemistry with their offensive linemen. And when you consider the Bills' offensive line situation, Mitch Morse, longtime starting center, now a member of the Jacksonville Jaguars, Ryan Bates to Chicago. You have Will Clapp and you have Connor McGovern, who are expected to compete for the starting position. You just added another big body there who's just 22 years old and has experience with the running back in the backfield there. He could be your day one starter at center position as a 5th round pick. That's my favorite pick. I think that's going to be a steal. He might not start day one, but eventually I envision him taking over as a starter. We'll see how it works out, though. It all depends on a bunch of things. Obviously, the guy, Keon Coleman, has been viral recently for everything that he's, obviously he has an awesome skill set, background in basketball, cousin of CeeDee Lamb, awesome bloodlines in the National Football League, but his press conference is hilarious. His personality is awesome, and it's really endearing to see the Bills' newest wide receiver do stuff like this.
I scored 3 imaginary touchdowns. I scored a touchdown. Boom. I dap up my lineman, they pick me up, and we throw the ball to the fan sitting right there, a little boy with a sign.
This guy is awesome. If he can pump the brakes on the imaginary touchdowns, he was like a kid in a candy store there. But let's see him get some real touchdowns now. Going to be a few months away, but I think it's going to be worth the wait. Now, if you haven't yet, I've been on for over an hour today, covered all 10 of the Buffalo Bills draft prospects. The NFL schedule should be released soon, and when that happens, there'll be a lot to talk about. I'll be right back here next Tuesday for Table Smash Tuesday. If you haven't yet, I encourage you to subscribe to the channel. Stay tuned for more content coming your way. I just made a video earlier today about Keon Coleman and his whole story, everything you need to know about him, and he's got a really fascinating story. He really does, so I encourage you to go check that out. It's on my channel. Go check it out. That's all I've got for you today. So I got my business cards. I wonder if any of you actually were handed one of these. I hand these out at the games quite frequently. So if you ever see these around at the game, just know I was there. That's all I've got for you. And I'm excited to see you next Tuesday. Click like. Stay tuned for more stuff coming your way. I'm Jake Varco. This is the Bills Bunker. Go Bills.
Go Bills. Look at this. Look at this crowd. Look at this.
Yes, it makes us wanna shout. Shout!
1, 2, 3, 4 years in a row. AFC East champion. It's our division. Let's go.
This guy's shirtless. He's dropping in.
Let's go.
That's a nice show for you. Look at it. Beautiful. Honestly, one of the best things I've seen all night. Those fireworks right there.